Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to the second channel video. Today I wanted to explain the UK's surprise general election. That's right, there is going to be a surprise general election in the UK on June the 8th, less than 2 months from me making this video. It was just announced today and everyone is genuinely surprised by this. And you might think, Toycat, if you can have surprise elections in the UK, which kind of weird by the way, but if you can have surprise elections, why is everyone particularly surprised by this one? And that's something I wanted to explain with today's video, but also explain the UK's kind of political scene / climate. So if you want to follow this like a sport, because let's be honest, following other countries' politics, it's a fun sport you can do, because you can see like which horse wins, are they going to win, and then people go out and vote and the votes come in and ooh, we don't really know. And I want to kind of explain the UK's kind of current political scene because this is going to be a particularly big deal of an election, and again, it was a surprise one, so I wanted to just go through everything. So if you want to follow UK politics for the next 6 or 7 weeks, or you just want to know what's up with this one, then you can do that. So yeah, let me actually start by explaining why this is such a big deal. This is a surprise general election for not only the Prime Minister herself, because the UK / Westminster style of politics involves both the legislature, the House, and the President or Prime Minister, because she's part of that, being elected at the same time. We're deciding not only our Prime Minister, but also every single seat in the House of Commons. There's going to be 650 separate elections that kind of determine this entire thing, and that's a really, really big deal. And the reason that this is such a big surprise, you might think like, okay, how is that even a thing you can do? Like, how can you set a surprise election? Surely you're elected and you serve 5 or 4 or whatever years it is, and this is true for most countries. In Germany and France, they also have elections this year. Their president or chancellor are elected for particular terms, and they serve those terms out, and then they set another election, and so on and so forth. I don't think Germany's quite the same. They can set it the same way, but in France in particular, I know it's 5 years. In America, it's 4 years. You serve your term, right, unless you're impeached. That hasn't been the case here, but in the UK political system, until 2011, you could just call an election whenever you wanted. You could just be like, it's been 3 years since the last one, or it's been 6 months since the last one, but screw it. In fact, in 1984, if I'm not mistaken, there were 2 elections in the same year because the first election didn't have a conclusive enough result. So they figured, let's go again in the October. They held a second election and it had a more conducive result. You can hold an election whenever you want in the UK as long as the entire parliament gets behind you, and that is why surprise elections weren't really a thing until 2011. In 2011, they set up an act. It was a coalition government. They set up an act to make it so that every 5 years there would be an election on May of the next 5 years. So in May of 2015 there was an election, and in May of 2020 there was going to be an election. However, that didn't happen, did it? Because we've got the surprise one this time. So how is this the case if we just set up that law where it has to be every 5 years on this day? Because the idea of the law was like no one party can get this giant kind of benefit by kind of playing it to their favours. However, that's just happened right now, has it not? Well, the thing is, the Act, just in case it ever needed to be the case, they've made it so that if the Act gets 2/3 majority in Parliament, so 2 out of 3 people, basically a supermajority. If you can get a supermajority, you can call the election when you want. And the supermajority, they do not have it right now, but because no opposition party ever wants to say, you know what, they've just said they want an election, we can't say we want them to stay in power, so I guess we're going for it. Even though the opposition is weak, they're going to be voting this too, and that is why, even though there's not meant to be an election, there is going to be a surprise election on June the 8th. There you go, there's a surprise explained. Our system's confusing, we just switched to a different system, but we've just decided after literally 6 years, even though we've got the rules for that system, we're just going to go back to our own thing where we have elections whenever it's beneficial for the person in charge at the time. And again, the person in charge right now is Theresa May. So why is she calling this? Why is she going through the effort of making a surprise election? She's putting herself at risk 3 years early. 2020 was when she would be otherwise elected, and the kind of basic reason for that goes a little bit back, but you just want to kind of understand that right now she has a fairly small majority, so if only I think she only needs 10 people to revolt against her, or 15 depending on how you want to count it, but she only needs 15 revolters against her and in her own party, and then she can't do anything. So basically she wants to increase that number, and also she's about to be negotiating Brexit. Brexit was just triggered a month ago now, not even a month ago. Brexit was already very recently triggered, actually going through now, and in the next 2 years there's going to be a lot of negotiations. Supposedly, the idea is if you vote for me and you prove that yes, we want this stuff, then she can go to the table with a stronger thing. That's the theory, that's why it's been said, but I think the reality that everyone can see if you look at what I'm about to show you is the fact that it's really just, I'm trying to stay off politics here. I don't care about party A, party B, I don't care about team blue, team red, team yellow, team purple, team other yellow, team green, whatever. I'm just here to tell you how it roughly looks, because again, I don't do your own thing. Most of you watching this video aren't from the UK. I can't influence your vote, and I don't intend to. Don't even sign up to vote if you don't want to. It'd be good if you did vote, but if you don't want to, that's fine. Let me just say that right now. But if you look at the opinion polls, so opinion polls are something where you might say, Toycat, opinion polls predicted that Brexit wouldn't win and Trump, Hillary would beat Trump. However, bear in mind, in both of those cases, the reason was that they were off by a few percent. So in Brexit's case, I think the poll was about 50.5 to staying in versus 49.5 to leaving. What it actually ended up being was 2% off or 2.5% off. Donald Trump, I think it was, they predicted the percent right, they just didn't apply it nationally correctly, and even then it was like a percent off. So opinion polls are pretty accurate, and even when they're wrong, that shows how accurate they are. Even in the case where they predicted Hillary would win, they predicted, Brexit wouldn't happen, or they predicted whatever, point you want to make about polls. Even though you might say these things, they really prove the accuracy of polls. And bear in mind, in this particular case, look, this is the reason that I think most people suggest that, the current Prime Minister has just called this election, is because if you look at the graphs right now, you can see, again, Team Blue is her team. In the UK, blue and red are flipped, so right wing is blue and left wing is red. Just keep that in mind. But basically, Team Blue is the current Prime Minister, and Team Red is the second largest party. As you can see, there is just after the election, they got a really big boost because, we're the winners. For some reason, when a party just wins, more people support them because people like to be on the winning side, even though they voted against them. Anyway, the point being, basically, as you can see, her percent went up. Basically, David Cameron was a person elected. His percent went up, and so on and so forth. Oh, that is a key thing I should mention here, actually. Very, very key point here. She wasn't, our Prime Minister right now was not actually elected. We did not elect Theresa May. Back in 2015, when this happened, we elected David Cameron, and he stood down just after the Brexit vote. That's a key part of it. Then, because in the UK, the Westminster style of politics, just the party leader of the Conservatives is who leads the country, or the largest party, and they had their own private election. It didn't even go to an election. They just said, oh yeah, we picked Theresa May, and then Theresa May, she became Prime Minister, and she was, loads of people asked over and over again, will you hold a surprise election? And she said no. That was roughly in this time, actually, in the 2016 kind of period. She was like, no, not really. It's not a good idea right now. We've got to get on with this. And then as soon as this happens, oh yeah, surprise election kind of works. Again, that sounds like I'm being like cynical against her, but like that's just like the numbers we can see. So yeah, here's what we'll grow. Here are the six largest parties. As you can see, the blue Team Blue is the team right. Team Red is team left. Then we've got the UKIP, which is the people who really wanted Brexit to happen. As you can see, they're Team Purple. Then we've got Team Orangey Yellow. These two are confusing, but Team Orange is the Liberal Democrats. They were the third largest party. Now they're like fourth, but maybe they'll come back to third one day. We've got the SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party. They want Scottish independence, and that's a whole other kind of worms we'll get into, don't worry. And then there's the Green Party, which are the super left alternative. I think there's a Green Party in America and most countries. Basically, yeah, super left. More left than that, and UKIP is generally more right than blue. So, yeah, super Team Blue, super Team Red if you want, and super Team neither, like in the middle. So, yeah, with that said, here you can see the current kind of results, and you might think, okay, Soy Cat, I know they're that far ahead. You might not even know how far that is, but, that's literally, in terms of polls, a consistent 15 to 20% lead. And in case you're like, but polls are wrong, Soy Cat, polls are just opinions. Well, bear in mind, in the, the case of Brexit and Trump, it was more like, some of them said, the opposing view, but most of them thought it would be a narrow win for the other person. In this case, every single poll, bar 3 from the past, 2 years, since May of 2015, for every single one of these polls in the past 2 years has said some form of Conservative win. Every single one of them. There's one every week, and only 3 have said a Labour lead by 3%, 3%, and 1%, versus the overwhelming tide of like 15%, 20%, and the most recent one is at 18 or 21%. So, yeah, what's the reality going to be on the end of this? Probably she gets elected again, and, she can say, oh yeah, this is my point for this, this, and this. And the reality is, the big kind of movement here is, oh yeah, well, now we have our next election in 2022, and we have, more Team Blue in charge or whatever, and isn't that great and fun? Well, it's not actually quite as simple as that. So, yeah, they're probably gonna win, they're probably gonna get the most votes by some decent amount, but there's a lot of kind of turbulence around that that's gonna be quite interesting. And the best way to explain this is with even more kind of pointing stuff out. So this is from Wikipedia, by the way, if you want to check it out yourself. That big gap right there is 20%. 20% is literally I think the largest blowout in American politics history was something like 66 to 33, where every state went one way, and basically that's one of the biggest ones ever, and that's like a 30% gap. This is only like 10% short of that. We haven't ever really had a party win by such a large amount, at least not for a very, very long time, and under very extraordinary circumstances. However, this is, I think in the next 7 weeks, something's going to happen here, and the easiest way to explain and why this is not necessarily accurate, like, oh yeah, Team Blue wins so much and Team Red loses everything, is if you look at the last, let's say, 3 elections. So let's go to the general election of 2005. Here are the 3 party leaders. This is the most popular Team Red guy for the past very, very long time, but he lost some popularity at the time. Here's Team Blue, here's Team Yellow. Again, 3rd largest party, not quite so relevant now, but they might become later. And here's what you just gotta keep in mind. Team Red won, and they won because they had 3 key regions, I'd say. There's a lot of, like, red dots around there, but even though, again, Red won by a pretty significant amount, larger than the current win for Team Blue. I'm just gonna keep saying Team Red and Blue so you can just, like, keep it on the level of, like, yep, there's one color and whatever color. There's 3 kind of key regions that they kind of won. There's the northeast, as you can see here, just a giant sea of red. It might look like it's a tiny amount, but they're very tiny constituencies. Because, like with, again, I'm just going to keep making references to other systems, like with France or Germany or anywhere else, really, there are constituencies, there are regions that people are electing, and instead of being like, one giant election, like the presidential election in the US is kind of led to be, it's lots of mini elections, but instead of being 50, one for each state, it's 650. Each of these regions, it doesn't matter how much you win them by. If you win them, you win them. If you lose them, you lose them. And in fact, one of the Northern Ireland ones, it was one of these tiny little green dots, was won by 24.5% in the last election. That's how much the vote they had, just because of how split the opposition was. But yeah, keep that in mind as we go forward. Yeah, like I was saying, there are 3 key regions that the Team Red had the last time they won. It was Scotland. There were a lot of seats in the south of Scotland, not so many in the north. They had lots of Scotland seats. I think it was 41, if I'm not mistaken. There is the northeast, as you can see, another kind of thing. Northwest, or Cumbria, I think it is, has a similar kind of thing. The north of England in general, just a giant sea of red. You might kind of underestimate how many seats that is, but that's a big population centre, and it's just all Team Red. And then there's a few dots around the rest of the place, but those are their 3 key areas. Keep in mind, just the north, generally, let's just say, and Scotland. The north and Scotland, the further north you go, the more Team Red wins. Very, very broad overgeneralization. Just keep that in mind for now, though. So now we'll go from this to 2010. In 2010, so actually, this is actually particularly important too. In before 2010, 2007, the leader of the Labour Party changed from, again, most popular Team Red guy to this man. He was unelected, like our current Prime Minister, and he wanted to hold the surprise election because he had a lead, kind of like the current lead over the Team Blue, and even though he had that lead, he was like, no, we'll just wait for the final election, and then this happened where he became the 2nd largest party. However, he didn't quite lose necessarily, he just didn't win so much. So yeah, this was the first time in UK's recent history there was a coalition government of Team Blue and Team Yellow over here, or orange, I guess you could call it. And you can also look at the map here and see there was a kind of pretty big shift, or there wasn't even that big of a shift, I should say. There was just kind of a subtle shift from like, oh yeah, well, those regions that used to be very, very red, they've been slowly encroached upon the tiniest bit by Team Blue. That's all it really was. They lost some of their big kind of red areas because they stopped appealing quite so much, and that's what led to Team Blue becoming the largest team. And you can also see, if you look here, the yellow tide got a little bit bigger. There's lots of different areas you can see, but we'll get into the point that, yep, that's what happened there. Coalition government happened, and as a result of the coalition government in 2010, even though, again, the Team Blue are not traditionally quite so popular in the UK, because right-wing parties aren't generally so populist or whatever, or popular, I should say. Even though that's the case, in 2015, after the end of the coalition government, even though they lost, a fair number of seats overall, they gained a lot of them from their coalition partners. Again, this is the most successful third-party result we've seen in quite some time. 57 seats for Team Yellow. You can see, Team Orange. If you look all over the place, you'll see they actually gained a lot of random spots here, there, and everywhere, and those added up and made them be the 3rd largest party and enabled them to go in coalition. However, because of a bunch of reasons, mostly coalition governments, because, again, European thing, but 2 parties got together to govern, the smaller party generally gets shafted because they feel like they're losing, and as a result of that, lots of people switched their vote from Team Yellow to Team Blue in a very confusing situation of events I can't fully explain. But if you then look at the map here, you can see that, oh yeah, well, here is 2015, all of the orange was eliminated, even though red, made some gains. For the most part, they lost all of Scotland, so that's, again, their 41 seats, all gone, because the SNP came up and they were like, yep, Scotland's ours now. So out of the 59 seats in Scotland, because the UK is 4 separate countries, 59 of the 650 go to Scotland, 56 were won by one party, the Scottish Nationalists. And this is like a big debate in the UK of like, oh yeah, is Scotland going to be independent or not? And this is one of the big points of like, probably, because 56 of them voted in favour of a party that likes independence. So the key things to keep in mind. So the Team Red lost all the way over there. Team Red also made some losses over there, and there's some losses just all over the place. And if you look at the map, it's just very, very blue. And this was in fact the first Team Blue majority for 25 23, I think it'd be. 23 years, which is a very, very big result. So, yeah, it was only the tiniest of majorities, though. Then the Brexit thing happened. They lost some of those seats. But let's just say this is the most recent election right now. This is what we're working forwards on for the next election. And just for a quick comparison, here's 2010. Here's 2015. You can really see, the loss of Team Red, the loss of Team Yellow, Team Orange. And you can see how even though, Team Blue made some tiny losses, you can see for the most part it's just like, oh yeah, well, Team Red lost so much, Team Blue gained all from Team Orange, and that led to them being the largest party. So that means that even though in 2017, the next election, will Wikipedia have that for us actually? Even though in the next election, again, the 2017, okay, there's no map here, even on the next election, you might think, okay, well, it's clearly, they had that giant lead on the number, right? Like, that much of a gap. They're clearly going to win, and it's going to be really easy. However, here's the bit you want to watch. Here's the bit where it gets into exciting, territory of, what's going to happen. Well, first of all, Team Orange, they were destroyed. They went to their lowest ever vote share of 8% or something, even though that's where they were before. As you can see, they've been slowly climbing. Second of all, UKIP, the third largest party at that election, they won one seat. They didn't get any seats, so there's no purple here. They won 13% of the vote, though. That 13% of the vote mostly is up for grabs. They've had so many leadership feuds. They've lost their most popular leader. They've lost their only MP. They won one seat. 0 seats right now. They're not likely to win anymore, and their point as a party is mostly gone, They're the UK Independence Party, and according to that motto, the UK has independence. We've triggered Article 50, Brexit is happening now. The UKIP's purpose, for the most part, at least in the mind of voters, is mostly gone. So that 13%, up for grabs. Also, there's going to be a significant shift to Team Orange. And bear in mind, again, no matter how much Team Blue increase their share by, they need to win all of these things, again, in the top. In these places right here, they need to win those if they want to take more seats, because staying where they are right now is good, but they need to win more. But are they going to win those places? Not generally. They're quite safe. They're generally very, very Team Red, and they're also going to make some losses, presumably, if they don't play their cards right, to Team Orange in the southwest. Again, if you look at these two maps right here, look at the southwest of England, Cornwall, Devon, etc. There's a lot of Team Orange sitting on there that lost their seats in 2015 because unpopular party, and they might just gain them back. They might just take all those seats back. Also, if you look at London, that's one of the other shifts where Team Blue lost a lot of seats and also took some, but even though they took some in that kind of case, there's a lot of these kind of cases where oh yeah, even though they're going to gain all of that vote share, it's mostly going to be spread around this blue area. This just, Middle England, Southern England, mostly votes Team Blue. Northern England is kind of the toss-up in some cases, and the Southwest is also apparently toss-up. That's what's going to happen right there. There's going to be this really interesting shift of they're going to get more votes with almost certainty. Again, 20% lead, they're probably going to be the largest party. You can say that with almost certainty, but will they have enough to win by themselves? The answer is probably, but this is why it's going to be interesting to follow, because it's not definitely. It's not even almost 100% definitely or 99%. It's who knows? There's so many areas where they have the potential to make losses, even if they're making all these gains in the places they don't need them. They have all this vote share, but it's not necessarily in the places that they're needed. Even though, again, so here's the case. Team, they have a majority of 15, let's say right now. 40 of those seats, or 38 or something, were gained from Team Orange, and a lot of those could be gained back. So even if just those go back and everything else stays the same, they do not have the majority they need. So they need to actually be aggressive. They need to actually win lots more, and that's why this is a very weird situation where they're going to win, they're going to have the most number of seats, but is it going to be enough? And if it's not enough, then again, how are they going to make that whole thing happen? That's why the UK's election is going to be quite interesting. As well, the other kind of bit I should say actually, as well as the Scotland question. Again, if you look at Scotland, you can see how it's basically not contested. 56 of their seats of the SNP. There isn't any realistic threat of that, going down. In fact, it's probably going to go up because you can't see on the map right here actually, but one of the seats, so there's a tiny little blob for Orkney and Shetland just up there. You can see it, the little orange blob. That's likely to go Team Yellow, so they're going to gain at least one of them. The Labour seat is kind of under attack, so it might be another one. And in fact, the Conservative seat wasn't the safest win in the world. So the Scottish Nationalist Party could go for a clean sweep of Scotland, win every single seat. That's something that no party has ever done, as far as I know, in British history. That's going to be a thing to watch. And if that is the case, then isn't that basically, a mandate? Not mandate, but isn't that impression towards independence. That's a really big deal that we're like leading up the question right now. If you look at Wales, that's going to be a big thing. Like, how are they going to shift their votes? It used to be a very, again, it used to be a very Team Red area, but a lot of that was lost to Team Blue, and maybe even more will go that way. Or maybe the Welsh nationalists will come in. Again, bear in mind, now Northern Ireland is out of play. Now Scotland is out of play. So to get a majority of the UK as a whole, even though they need the free 26 seats, that includes the seats they're not going to win. They can't win. They don't even stand a chance of winning in Scotland and in Northern Ireland, and maybe soon in Wales. There is a rising Welsh nationalist sentiment. It's realistically not going anywhere, but it's something that like they can play a big part in. If like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And they have free seats in this thing right here. There's all these big questions because the UK isn't just a wide thing. Just because one party is going to win, it doesn't mean they're going to win enough. And that's why this is such a cool election, in my opinion. We know who's going to win, unless, you got to imagine the kind of terrible things that happen there, but we don't know if they're going to win enough, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And if you want to follow the UK's election, June the 8th, people will be voting. Will I vote? I don't know. Who will I vote for? Good question. I'll work that out. But yeah, that's why the UK's 2017 surprise general election is a big deal. Hope you all enjoyed the video. This was a bizarre one. I just wanted to kind of upload to let you know what's going on, because I'll see you all in another video. Let me know what you thought of it, actually, because I did one of these for Brexit, but this is like a bit different of a thing, right? But anyway, hope you all enjoyed the video. Bye.